What's up, guys, and welcome back to Heel Report presented by Tar Heel 24/7. I'm Jacob Turner. He's Andrew Jones and AJ. We're here for another edition of our UNC football preview show. We're going to be looking ahead to Carolina's matchup this Saturday down in Orlando against Central Florida, or as Bill Belichick likes to call him, AJ, Central.
You're not supposed to call him any of that.
Just an uproar yesterday when he said that, which I'm still trying to figure out why that was such a bad thing to say. Do you have any further context you can provide on that before we dive into this?
Come on, guys. That's what the name of the university is. Change the name of the university if you don't want to be called that.
I know.
If technically speaking, journalistically, first reference is supposed to be Central Florida. First reference for Texas Christian was supposed to be TCU, or Texas Christian, not TCU, even though the schools want to go by that. Now, I'm more UCF based than I was straight TCU based, simply because UCF is requesting that there is no mention of anything other than UCF. It's sort of like UCLA. You don't say, the University of California at Los Angeles Bruins.
That's a good point. Yeah.
But they kind of earned that over time. Like they actually won real championships, not the fake one from a few years ago. So, and I'm only having fun with that. I don't think you should put that on your stadium because you didn't win it. And it's just kind of strange, like Auburn doing that here recently. Oh, we decided we won 5 more championships. No, you didn't. Stop with that. Central Florida had a great team that year, and they deserve to pat themselves on the back as much as they can, but don't call yourself the national champion. I'll be pelted with eggs when I'm walking to the stadium Saturday. And I actually think it's a cool program. I like the fact that Scott Frost is back. Justin Wilson's the football media relations guy at Carolina, was at UCF. And we talked a lot yesterday about it and a couple other times. And I'm so excited going down there. I love how they went about building this program. And if you look at the coaches that they've had there, going back to George O'Leary, they've had some pretty impressive coaches there. They have turned themselves into basically nothing, in a sense, working their way up, trying to gain relevance, getting into FBS kind of thing, to where they're in the Big 12 and a legitimate program. And I think any team that beats them on the road, it's a very, very good win. So they should be very proud of where they are and not worry if people like me make little swipes about the national championship and whether you're Central or UCF. I mean, just be proud of who you are. It's a phenomenal. I'm excited to go down there. A, I've never covered a game there before. So I want to see what the bounce house is all about. B, I want to see what the campus is all about. I've heard a lot of that. Justin said it's a great campus. I'm going to get my steps there Friday. I'm looking forward to it. Although I may have to wear a bag over my head or like a fake mustache because I get pelted with stuff now.
Yeah,
I think be proud of who you are, man. Be proud of who you are and what you've done, and the fact that you're favored to beat Bill Belichick in North Carolina this week for obvious reasons.
Yeah. 3:30 p.m. kickoff down in Orlando. Like you just mentioned, UCF's currently a 6.5-point favorite in that one. That game's going to be televised on Fox as well. We've got an exciting show ahead. People clicking on here and be like, AJ and Jake, you promised us last week you're going to have a guest on the next couple of shows. Have no fear. We do have a guest coming in for a fun segment later on, bringing in Brian Murphy from WRAL. He's a sports investigative reporter for them, UNC graduate as well. He's going to be coming on to talk a little Carolina football as well, but even more
he's covered all 3 games. He's got all the press conferences.
He's been there. He's going to come in and talk about a lot of Carolina's.
Some of the private meetings I've been in over there at the university the last few years, he's in just about every one of them. He's really, really, if you don't follow him on Twitter, follow him. Or X or whatever you want to call it. I mean, he's the person who knows more about the finances and future distribution of finances, from the gambling money in the state to everything else. He knows a lot more about that than anybody else in the media, including myself, and I'm looking forward to learning from him today.
Yeah, we're going to bring him in again to talk Carolina football this season so far, but also even more so talking a little bit about Carolina's financial situation, NIL, revenue share, and all that kind of stuff. So looking forward to having him on here in a little bit. But before we dive into that, we're kind of going to parse this into 3 different segments. So we're going to have this first segment here. We're going to talk about kind of the vibe around Carolina this week, the program going into Bill Belichick and this team's first P4 road test of the season. Then we're going to bring Brian Murphy in at the end. We'll preview UCF and talk a little bit more about them and what to expect down in Orlando on Saturday. But AJ, you've been in the Keenan Football Center this week already. It's almost like you're living in Chapel Hill now. I mean, you go over there about every day with everything going on. I mean, it seems like there's another press conference event about every single day over there now, which is great. The access is fantastic, but it is
this is including basketball, by the way.
Yeah, I was about to say including basketball.
We're already in a basketball football overlap.
Yeah, that it's funny. That overlap starts like even sooner now. Like it's almost like when football season starts, you're in it, buddy. Like
November used to be the overlap month, and it was the toughest month of the year. Now it started a few weeks ago.
Yeah, it's crazy, man.
But it's a lot more information. Basketball is great with access. Football has gotten better with access, which is part of what we want to talk about today, simply because the vibe aspect of it. I thought Bill Belichick was really good on Tuesday. Mm-hmm. I was asked a question. We're doing exchanging 5 questions with the publisher of the UCF site in 24/7 Sports. And one of the questions he asked was, what's it like basically covering Belichick? And I said, A, it's better than expected. B, he hasn't come off as the curmudgeon yet, and I don't think he will because he's in a different environment and recognizes that. I think the program is still feeling its way around how to deal with college media, to be honest with you. I think that they've made some big mistakes.
100%.
But I think that there's an awareness and understanding to recognize and work on things we get twice a week, which I didn't expect to get. We didn't get coaches on a second day last year under Mac Brown. So I think Bill's been really good, and I've been really putting a lot into sort of gauging him from week to week because he's the tone setter of the program.
Yeah.
People say, oh, Carolina was soft because Mac's soft. Okay, well, then you got to look at Bill the same way. Bill is obviously not soft. We've seen this team get tougher the last couple of weeks. Obviously, the competition hasn't been that great, but they have been better in their assignments. People don't make enough of the progress that they made in some areas defensively because they're just brushing it aside saying, look who they played. That has nothing to do with pre-snap. That has nothing to do with tackling technique. That has nothing to do with making your fits. That has nothing to do with adjusting, like I said in pre-snap, preparing certain fundamentals offensively. Some of the blocking fundamentals have improved. Those kinds of things. A fundamental, again, is the same against you as it is against somebody in the NFL. The difference is the guy in the NFL is going to blow you over. But it's still the learning technique, which this staff is emphasizing every single solitary day with the patience of knowing there is a payoff. It may not be this moment. It may not be this Saturday, but there is a payoff. And that's, to me, what has impressed me the most about this week, Jacob. The patience of the program has never been more obvious than it has the last 5 days to me. And I am going to say I don't have this with absolute certainty, but I believe that the preseason is kind of over.
I was going to ask you.
I believe they've been in the preseason. I didn't know for sure until Tuesday. And Tuesday, I just got the vibe that, okay, we have stacked some stuff. We still don't know a lot about who we are. We're in the depths of self-discovery mode. However, we've used these 3 games to find out a lot about what we can't do. Now let's go determine what we can do. I'm speaking for them, obviously. I think that's kind of where they are right now. And if I'm right, then you're going to see nuances and wrinkles added moving forward. And you're going to see some stuff that they'll determine early in the game. Well, you can't run that play because they're going to beat you on the snap every time. So when you see the insistence on the dive play against TCU 37,000 times, you might not see it if it doesn't work against UCF or Clemson or Virginia, whoever it is moving forward. The last 9, the back 9, if you will, to make David Sisk thrilled with the golf reference, the back 9 is where it counts now.
He was playing golf yesterday, by the way. Tuesday,
he's playing golf right now, probably.
Unbelievable. I mean, he's a teacher. He works over here. I don't know how he does it. Honestly, the guy's
probably got a putting green in his classroom.
I mean, he probably does. I wouldn't blame him.
If you love our golf coverage, and there's going to be more today, maybe, David is totally into golf. He's doing a lot of that. We had a baseball thing we tweeted out. We're doing a lot of stuff. We're still adding to our staff, just to let you know, giving a big old sidebar here. We're going to cover some other stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm very excited about that. So we're continuing to kind of feel our way around with the new site and make some adjustments. I'm adjusting some of what I'm doing, which I'm very, very excited about. Of course, I'm looking forward to being in Orlando on Saturday as well. But Jacob, I really kind of I got a positive vibe Tuesday.
Yeah.
Very positive. I think the program is relaxed some. I think everybody's kind of got, Okay. We've gone through that.
Maybe feeling a little bit more certainty in what they have a little bit. And I know, again, it's still, and we talked about it because in hindsight, once we kind of realized, especially after the TCU game and kind of going into Charlotte, it feels like this team is still in eval mode. We've talked about it. Felt like this team was kind of like a month behind in terms of the amount of substitutions they were doing. They're really just trying to figure out what they have. But when you look at the schedule in hindsight and you say, okay, you got TCU, you'd rather not just get destroyed on national television, but that's what happened. It is what it is. You move on. And then you've got a trip to Charlotte, very winnable game, which they did. And then you've got a home game against a Richmond team, an FCS opponent. And you're like, okay, looking back, you actually kind of had a schedule that's set up well to maybe say, hey, let's treat this like a preseason for the first 3 games. If we somehow find a way to beat TCU, great. Didn't happen, like I said. But it seems like now, especially going to this UCF game and with the bye week following before Clemson, it does feel like the schedule sets up nicely for this to be the official end of quote unquote preseason. But I want to ask you this too, because you said that you feel like the preseason or whatever is kind of over now, if you want to put it that way. What led you to believe that? Was there anything that Belichick said specifically, or is it more so just kind of the vibe from talking to everybody over there on Tuesday, excuse me?
It's a lot of it is vibe. I go by vibe a lot, and the vibe has a lot of variables that go into it. Conversations, obvious. Reading Bill during the pressers, I thought there was a really interesting exchange he had with Jeremiah Holloway from IC about communication with Gio. And Noah's working on a piece, and I find it fascinating to think that on a certain level, Gio Lopez is having a lot of the same conversations with Bill Belichick that Tom Brady had. So, like, it's bringing along. Tom Brady, remember, he was a 6th-round draft pick. He wasn't a star right out of the gate. So there's a molding factor. There's a learning factor. There's a having those conversations. If you're Gio and you're struggling, and physically there might be some things he simply can't do no matter how much film he watches, no matter how many conversations he has with Bill Belichick. But if you listen to Belichick on Tuesday, a lot of the things that Gio has not looked great at have not been entirely his fault. It's been a split-second timing of the route getting messed up. Sometimes it's him a split second late throwing the ball. And he gave an example of a pass that Gio threw to Jake Johnson on Saturday where a week before he threw it the wrong time and it didn't move the chains. This time he threw it at precisely the right time. And instead of Johnson getting the ball, turning upfield and getting 2 or 3 yards, he got 4 or 5 and got the first down, and it moved the chains. Like the nuances of how they view things and how they measure progress is a lot different than how it's been articulated by other coaches I've covered from lots of different programs. And I covered a little bit of Beamer and Virginia Tech when I was at Fox. I covered the early days of Dabo at Clemson when I was at Fox. They didn't articulate things this way. Beamer was maybe a little bit more nuts and bolts with special teams. That was his thing. But I really thought that it tells me, A, that Gio's their guy still. And everything I'm being told is he's 100% the guy. And they have put him in positions to not make a lot of mistakes because they're trying to get the foundation settled and figure out, get him comfortable with some of the little things. Now, they did move the ball a little bit better their day in terms of converting 3rd downs and things like that. They didn't have a great offensive game. We were very critical of it, but they're not looking at it that way. The fan base is panicking because they had 300 yards against Richmond. The media is critical because they had 300 yards against Richmond. The staff is saying, okay, here's how we got the 300 yards. Most of it was done properly, except that one run that June had, which was 50 yards, which actually wasn't blocked properly. It was supposed to be 4 or 5, and he made a play. But they're looking at it as if, are we executing this properly? Are we technically sound with what we're doing? And if all 11 eventually get like that and the quarterback is confident to do these things, eventually it's going to work. There's no panic at all. And I thought it was interesting. I noted in August that there was no panic. I just think that one of the things they learned is how to evaluate their own talent. And now they've done that because they've had 3 games on film. That's why a guy was last in the depth chart in August. He's now the starting running back. Eden Buchanan was the starting left tackle as a true freshman in August. And then if it wasn't for William Boone getting hurt the other day, I don't even know if Buchanan would have gotten on the field.
Yeah.
Maybe it would have been in the jumbo package or something like that. So there's a lot of learning and a lot of understanding. And I think that they've kind of reached a point now where they've done an exhale because they have a pretty sound idea of what they can't do. I think it's more important to figure that out than what you can do, especially when you're looking at the season the way they have. Because the last night, like those 8 ACC games are really all that matters in the grand scheme of things right now. Obviously, this Saturday's huge. You want to get the win. You want to get the confidence. You never want to lose or anything like that. And they're going to approach this game like it's the biggest game they've ever played. But my point is, I think that their long-term view is now catching up to where it's the in front of them view. It's right there. And maybe this team just stinks. And maybe what they've learned is they're not very good, and they're just going to try to squeeze whatever drops out of this baby as they can. I don't know. But what they have – what they didn't have 3 weeks ago. It's the greatest slogan in the history of the Western civilization. And it's from that cinema classic, Animal House.
Classic, man.
Favorite college.
I used to have that shirt, by the way, that college shirt used to have.
Knowledge is good. They have knowledge now. That's a positive.
Yeah, they do. And we'll talk about more about the offense after we bring Brian on here in a second. Because I want to talk a little bit of that as we preview the UCF game too. But I think the question mark now is, okay, you maybe understand what you have better now, but that doesn't mean that you're going to go out there, especially on the offensive side of the ball, and, light it up or grow or continue to get better. Because what we've seen in the small sample size, especially in the last couple of weeks against lesser opponents, is this is an offense that's struggling and, through 3 games ranks 126 nationally out of 134 teams in total offense. So there are a lot of things you can point at and say, okay, they might understand what they have better now, but like you just mentioned, is the talent there good enough to get you, over the hump in some of these games starting this Saturday in Orlando? I think that's the biggest question mark now moving forward as we dive into the really thick of the schedule where it is, P4 opponents and conference opponents the rest of the way. So very intrigued to see what happens on Saturday because it does start on Saturday. This is preseason's over. Let's see what this team can do. If they go down to UCF and struggle on Saturday, offensively especially, I think there's a lot of Carolina fans are going to be like, yeah, well, we kind of saw that coming. I mean, this is maybe just an offense that's not very good. But
there's 2 questions, Jacob. There's 2 questions. You can answer it. Everybody paying attention, watching, listening can answer it. Number 1, 2 questions that might be answered Saturday because UCF's good enough that if Carolina can be exposed in an area, I think UCF is capable of exposing them.
Yeah.
So have they learned enough about the offense that they've trimmed off all the crap and now they're going to go forward with some solid stuff that works where it's enough to get a win?
Mm-hmm.
Right? We'll know. Defensively, are some of the gaudy numbers because of who they played the last 2 weeks?
Yeah, that's another big question.
Now, they say the communication is so much better now. The pre-snap communication is so much better.
We've heard that before, AJ. We've heard that
before in Chapel Hill. Goodness knows how many times. But they also say, and I did ask Bill this on Saturday after the Richmond game, it looks like the organization defensively is better. We did a podcast about this, and people say, look who they're playing. Who you're playing has nothing to do with what your organization is. It has nothing to do with certain levels of execution. Now, making plays, bringing guys to the ground, and all that kind of stuff, yes. Lesser competition is going to make all that easier. But the stuff that they're drilling into this unit are the things that can be tested against Hoggard High School in Wilmington or against TCU. Because certain aspects must be very good no matter who you're playing, and it can be identified and recognized no matter who you're playing. And, of course, the rest of it is man versus man kind of thing. So we're going to learn about the man versus man thing some this weekend because UCF has got a lot of talent. There's a very talented quarterback. They got a lot of speed, explosive plays out the wazoo. So Carolina's athletics, remember they looked slow against TCU, but they've looked faster the last 2 weeks. And one reason you look faster is because you're just better in pre-snap. We'll see. Because if they look slow again against UCF, then guess what? That's a slow defense.
Yeah.
So the things that we think we're reading right now or might be reading, because I'm not making declarative statements.
There's like an asterisk beside these statements.
Well, I'm just sensing. It's what I'm sensing.
Yeah.
But it could be off.
Could be.
We'll find out. We'll find out that maybe they're slow or maybe they are faster than they were against TCU. Offensively, have they gotten rid of the crap, trimmed the fat off, and they kind of know who they are enough that they can do enough offensively to score some points to have a defense help them with getting good field position, maybe getting some turnovers. They have 5 turnovers the last 2 games, and they did get a key one in the red zone against TCU. So they've been solid in the red zone. They bowed up some. So I think a lot of these things we're going to find out on Saturday, which makes me so excited to go down there because they're playing a good team, a team in a similar situation with a lot of new players and a proven coach. And there's a lot of electricity and excitement there because guess what happened last time Scott Frost was there? Mm-hmm. That's why they put that thing up on the stadium. They're undefeated, and they were damn good.
They were good that year. There's no doubt about it. Yeah, I agree. We're going to move this thing on, though, AJ. We're going to bring in Brian Murphy here in a second. So, here's our interview with Brian. All right, guys, we're excited to welcome Brian Murphy into the show, UNC graduate and current sports investigative reporter at WRAL. He's done a ton of reporting on Carolina's financial situation within the athletic department, including NIL, revenue sharing. And he's also been covering the team as well. So, Brian, before we dive into a little football, man, how you doing? We appreciate you joining the show today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Busy week. It seems like they're all busy now in the Bill Belichick era.
It's unbelievable how busy it is. It's a great busy, though, isn't it?
It is. And this week, I think, may go a long way in determining how busy we are for the rest of the season.
100%. 100%. That is a great point. Brian, before we talk about, we brought you on, we kind of introed it early. We want to kind of get you to fill us in on some of the financial stuff because, again, it is not me and AJ's expertise like it is with you. So we're going to spend a big chunk of this segment talking about that. But as someone, again, who's been covering the team this year, before we dive into that, I wanted to get your thoughts on kind of what you've seen from this team so far through 3 games. Me and AJ spent a lot of time in the first segment talking about how it feels like this preseason kind of evaluation mode, for lack of a better word, has come to an end. And now feels like this staff kind of knows what it has a little bit more. Now, what that translates to on the field remains to be seen. But just what are your thoughts kind of overall on what you've seen from this team in year 1 under Bill Belichick so far?
Yeah, I think it's really hard to evaluate, right? Were these first 3 weeks sort of an evaluation period to figure out what they've got? I think, AJ has pointed out that, they played a lot of different people throughout those first 3 games, but they played a lot of different people in the Richmond game than they played in the TCU game. And so now, are you moving forward with those guys? Are you done with that evaluation period? I'm really interested to see how much they've grown since the TCU game, right? I think TCU is a little better than UCF, but they're both Big 12 schools. This one's on the road. UCF has a lot of speed. We saw what speed could do to Carolina in the opener. Guys running free behind their secondary, guys breaking tackles and then running free through their secondary. So I think it's kind of a statement game, not necessarily, or maybe a yardstick game, right?
Yeah.
How far have you progressed? Is the Belichick regime, sort of taking hold, or are you not that much different than you were against TCU and you just beat up on some inferior competition? I think this is kind of like a yardstick game because from here on out, it's all ACC opponents. And I think UCF is equivalent to many of the teams they're going to play in the ACC. So if you can't play against UCF, are you going to have problems in the ACC?
Yeah,
I think that's very fair. One of the things that I think Saturday represents is, I think yardstick is a great way to put it. I think they they know a lot more about their team now, but do they? And I think a lot of that's either going to be confirmed or raise even more questions based on what, not just the results Saturday, but how they get to that result. We've already seen that they may not have totally understood their team in August, because look at the dramatic depth chart movement that we've seen from Damon June. We've seen Eden Buchanan. He wouldn't have played the other day until mop-up duty if William Boone didn't get hurt. So what they thought they saw in August, I think, has changed in September, but now they've had 3 games. And Bill said that when he's mentioned a couple of times that TCU exposed them, that's actually a positive if you want to find out what you are and what you have and what you need to throw out and what you need to keep. And I maintain that the last 2 weeks have been more about finding out what they can't do so they don't try to do that moving forward than what they can do. I think Saturday, now they're going to learn about some things that they can do. And if they don't screw it up with the stuff that they don't do well, then they have more of a chance. So I still think they're in the information gathering stage, but I also think they've positioned themselves now where they're playing for keeps. This is a game to win. This is a game to prepare to go win. And it's about winning first and learning second, whereas the last few weeks, I think, was about learning as much as anything else.
Yeah, that dramatic change in the depth chart, I think, points to this. But also, I think that TCU game served as, we've heard players say it served as a wake-up call that, hey, whatever we were doing wasn't good enough. And I think that was maybe a wake-up call for the coaching staff too, that like whatever guys we thought could compete at this level, maybe they can't. We got to go find, you got to remember that they don't get any preseason games like Belichick got in the pros, but also a lot of these guys just showed up on campus in June. These weren't, you didn't have a whole spring with Gio Lopez. You didn't have a whole spring with some of these other guys. And so this, you get a month and then you got to go out and play a game, under the lights against TCU. I think, exposed deficiencies, which is the word Belichick's used. I think in many ways you're right. It sort of showed them what they had or maybe what they didn't have.
Yeah. There's no doubt about it. Yeah, we've said it before. It kind of felt like Carolina was like a month behind almost a little bit. We've talked a lot about that. And I think it was really kind of exposed in that TCU game, but just with the sheer amount of rotation that we've seen over the last few weeks. And I also think, like we've talked about before, the schedule kind of set up nicely for that in hindsight, because again, it'd be great if you could beat TCU rather than not get destroyed on national television like Carolina did. But when you've got games at Charlotte and Richmond that follow, it kind of gives you a little bit better of a situation to say, hey, we can kind of roll some guys out, play some different guys, look at some different rotations and figure out who we are before we head into UCF, because not to mention we've got a bye week afterwards as well before we welcome Clemson in. So it does feel like the schedule kind of set up well for that. But I think in hindsight, they would have rather that TCU game maybe just go a little bit differently than it did, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, nobody wants to be that embarrassed, right, on national television. Right.
Yeah,
Brian, what's your take on Gio? And also with what Bill said yesterday, I thought that was a pretty good exchange he had with Jeremiah about the conversations with Gio. And I find it interesting, and Noah and I were talking, no one's going to do a piece. We were talking afterward. Those are some conversations to a certain degree, to a certain level, he had with Tom Brady. So these are conversations you have with quarterbacks, and Gio's now getting the benefit of that. And it seems pretty clear to me that Gio's their guy moving forward. They're very invested in him. And I think what they've done the last couple of weeks is really find out what he can't do. But they're also still trying to find the right guys to play with him. He mentioned a couple of the passes to Jake Johnson, the tight end. They threw one ball to a tight end in the first two games. They threw 5 the other day. It's about moving the chains, which gives Gio confidence. And he said, look, it's not just the quarterback. It's the timing of the route. It's when the guy breaks. All that kind of stuff goes into it. So he's protecting Gio a little bit, which tells me Gio's the guy moving forward. But also, so many of the conversations are about the mental stuff. I think they feel like believe Gio can do the physical stuff more than what we've seen. And perhaps we start seeing that moving forward. What is your take on all that he said yesterday and Gio moving forward?
Yeah, a couple things. Like, I think Belichick just wants to find ways to win the game ahead of him. Like, if that means altering what you're doing for that 1 week, because that's what gives you the best chance to win, I think they're willing to do it. And so I think it's hard to build like, oh, this is what the Carolina team's going to look like, because I think they're changing so much week to week to just try to win that game.
Yeah.
On Gio, I thought some of his conversation with Shelby, too, was interesting, where, one of the most interesting things he said is like, you have to anticipate the guy being open, not see him being open, because by the time you see him, it's too late.
Yeah.
And that's something that we've seen, right? Even the touchdown pass to Ship was a little bit high. Ship made a nice play. Like, how much is he anticipating guys being open versus having to wait and actually see them open? But the conversation about like Tom Brady was a guy who wasn't going to run. And so he had to really focus on pre-snap. Where is everybody going to be? Where does the ball have to go? Belichick talked about yesterday, with a guy who can run, there's other stuff you've got to bring into the conversation. It's not just about where is everybody going to be at the snap, but, where are my running lanes going to be? Or what is this defensive end doing if I'm running an RPO? That's stuff you didn't have to worry about when you had Tom Brady as your quarterback. So I do think he's like talking about throwing a lot of stuff at Gio, and it seems clear it's Gio's team, moving forward. I think I said this earlier in the season. I think, Gio probably gives you a higher ceiling than Max Johnson. Max Johnson might give you a higher floor. And so which one do you want to go with? Well, obviously they've decided to go with Gio, and I think he's gotten better, but this is a huge step up in competition. And if he performs like he did against TCU, UNC is going to have a really tough time winning that game.
The other thing that really struck me, too, was he was talking about confidence. And I think Shelby may have asked the question about when do you know the quarterback's confident? He says when he throws the ball.
Right.
It's that split second. So they're clearly zeroing in on some small things with Gio that they think could actually make a big difference. And that split second right there is a big deal. And if we see an improvement in that split second, you're going to see them throw the middle more. because they were doing a lot of that in fall camp. Working a ton of stuff, drags across the middle. Jordan Shipp can be a chain mover. I think Jake Johnson could be a chain mover. Jared Owens could be a chain mover. I think that's what they want. That's what they see. And then maybe it could open up some of the big stuff because they haven't shown much of a vertical passing game. However, he's hit a couple big plays, but it's not consistently there. And if they can start moving the chains, it's going to soften things, and then Gio's going to gain a lot more confidence. So there's a baby step element to this, which I find very fascinating for a guy who started a year ago and had success, and also for a head coach who's 73 years old and has 6 Super Bowl rings, and he's doing baby steps with a quarterback during a college football season.
Yeah, I mean, I think we even, not just Gio, but, we heard some players yesterday talk about, like, and even Bill talk about, like, if you teach a guy one day and then you don't have to go back to it, like, it really is a teaching process. And I'm not saying he's different than every other coach out there in America, but the way he talks about the teaching process, I think, is a little different. And to say, like, I don't want to have to keep going over the same thing again and again and again, so then you're not making any progress. With Gio, it sounds like, okay, if we can introduce this concept and he can get it, then we can move to the next thing and introduce that concept. And so I think there is a progression in a way we don't always hear about in college football.
Yeah, changing the conversation over to the kind of more financial side again, which you're an expert on when it comes to North Carolina and the athletic department. I think me and AJ's tone has almost shifted a little bit because we spent a lot of time in the preseason talking about you don't spend X amount of money on the football program and give Bill Belichick this massive contract to come in and maybe win in a few years. We'll build for the future. And again, that's even more difficult to do now with the transfer portal and NIL and trying to build a roster over a couple season period is almost, it just doesn't really happen as much anymore because people get up and go somewhere else or get offered to play, make more money somewhere else and decide to transfer. So what is your opinion on how the season outlook with the team and just the sheer amount of money that has been backed into the program? Because I think there's some people that say, you hire Bill Belichick, he's won that many Super Bowls, arguably the greatest coach of all time. You kind of want to win now instead of potentially maybe winning in a couple of years. So how do you look at that when you look at what this team is versus the amount of, again, financial backing that the football program has received since Belichick came in?
Yeah, I mean, in an ideal world, I think for the administrators, you'd be 11-1 and fighting for an ACC title berth, or a game in the championship game, and maybe a CFP. I think we understand how unrealistic maybe that is, but I think some of the spending is just to get UNC up to kind of a baseline, right? Yeah. To prove that you're invested in this, and it's not to me, it's not just the spending on Belichick and revenue sharing and all that, but it is the Chapel thrill, right? Turning campus. I said this on air one day. You put nothing shows your commitment to football like putting a concert venue, like a stage, right in front of the Wilson Library, right? Nothing says we're all in on football that we're going to have a pregame party right in front of our most important academic building on campus. They turned that entire quad into a tailgating scene. Now, will it kind of duplicate from game to game to game? We'll see. But they are investing in football in a way, and not just Belichick's salary and revenue sharing, but everything, facilities, the administration, like everybody's on board with this. And I think so. Some of that spending is just to get you to a baseline. I don't know that it, certainly this season, you've gotten, I think it's worked. In some ways, it's already worked. You've sold out of your season tickets. Sponsorships are up. There were State Farm logos on the field. Like, you're getting some of that return on investment already. You added more premium seats with the terraces at the Blue Zone and the Keenan Skybox. Like, you've got the conversation about Carolina football. So in some ways, it's really worked. The next part, and maybe the last part, is does it work on the field? Does it elevate the brand on the field? But in many ways, I think it has elevated the importance of football on campus and certainly to the administration.
Brian, you talk to a lot of the same people I do. We've been in some of those same conversations, in fact. And the commitment to doing this, to really dramatically changing the landscape, was there before Belichick was on their radar. And I think that's what makes this a perfect marriage, even if he doesn't succeed on the field, because of what's left over for the next guy. And I think and Carolina as well as anybody about the culture and everything. One of the things they've defeated is the pushback culture on campus. And we're going to see that. You're going to see more changes at Keenan. You're going to see stuff done to when you walk into the concourse and you look around and you say, yeah, football matters here. Because I think you can argue on the concourse, it doesn't look like it matters right now. And that's a timing thing that's going to happen over time. The investment's there. And I think going with Belichick wasn't like going, well, we're paying Mac this, so we're going to pay this guy this. They had already done everything else and committed to everything else. And like, yeah, well, let's lop on this much more money to get this guy, to get Lombardi, to get the entire infrastructure that they demand. And they did it. So even if it doesn't work on the field and he's gone in 2 or 3 years, whoever the next coach is that comes in, his baseline is so dramatically higher than it would have been without making this higher that I think it makes Carolina a more immediate player. And they're positioning themselves to either be financially and organizationally dominant in the ACC with the right hire, or if they have to move over to the SEC or Big Ten, their infrastructure and competing financially is there right away.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the subtext of all of this, right? Yeah. The next round of realignment is coming in 2030, 2031, maybe sooner, maybe later, but it's coming, and we all know it's coming. And I think a lot of this is about putting yourself in the best position to make that move, and we all think Carolina will have opportunities if they want to make that move. But then when you make that move, be competitive. You don't want to go to whether it's the SEC or the Big Ten and be Maryland. Just be an afterthought in the league. And that's not a knock on Maryland, but they're not competing for Big Ten titles. You don't want to be Kentucky in football where you're just middle of the pack or even worse. And so I think a lot of this is like positioning yourself for the next move. I think Lee Roberts deserves, credit or blame. You decide which he deserves, but I think he has moved the needle in this area and in this department. And I think you're right. Like, you could have hired Tommy Rees or Jeff Monken or John Summerall and committed the same amount of money, but it would have had less of an impact. Yeah. Because Bill Belichick is just going to, they care about football. You could have hired one of those guys and put the same commitment in. I'm not sure you would have gotten the same conversation that, Carolina cares about football. But by hiring Belichick and doing all those things, I think you've changed the narrative at least a little bit about how much you're willing to invest and how much you care about football.
I think you're right. I think they're showing that there's an appetite. Because they hired Butch Davis. I was at his introductory press conference. I was told that Dick Bedore, the first time he ever met Butch Davis was when he introduced him on that stage. But they didn't follow up with the rest of the investment. They let him design the Blue Zone, which say what you will about the Blue Zone. But that was not the investment they needed to make at the time. They go get Mac Part 2. I've seen the numbers. I ran a story last year on the numbers. Mac got considerably more money than Larry got, but it wasn't nearly enough, which is why Mac was on the phone all the time trying to raise money for NIL, which is an area he struggled. Now all of that is there. And on top of it, there could be more money coming. I want you to explain to me, like I'm in first grade, what the gambling revenue that you've written about that NC State and Carolina can get, how that affects the university, how that plays out, and please do it like I just had my first day of first grade.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, no problem. If you see me looking off to the side, I got spreadsheets upon spreadsheets, so I'm going to reference those a little bit. So let's start at the beginning, right? Sports gambling launched in the state in March of 2024, and tax revenue, whatever the sports gambling operators make, they get taxed at 18%. That money goes in part to get the votes that they needed to pass this thing. That money goes to 13 UNC system schools. I mean, it goes to other places too, but a percentage of that goes to 13 UNC system schools. That's everyone that has a college intercollegiate athletics department except NC State and North Carolina. So the other schools have made about $2 million already, and they're making more every month. We're talking about by the time September is over, there will be more than $10 billion bet on sports in the state in 18 months. Wow. So the little bit of politics here. The House and the Senate put their own budget proposals out there. And in each of those budget proposals, the House and the Senate said, okay, it's time to give Carolina and State some of this money. So they rewrote those distribution formulas. The House would give UNC and NC State the same amount as Charlotte, ECU, and App State. Based on their numbers, they would keep the tax rate at 18%. And those schools would get about $12 million a year, or in the first year, up to $14 million in the second year. That's considerably more than schools like Greensboro and Asheville and Wilmington, which are at about $3.5 million. So they're upping the distribution to all the schools and including NC State and North Carolina in. The Senate's proposal would double that tax rate to 36%. I don't think that's going to happen, but that's what their proposal would do. So, of course, now you got double the amount of money to play with. Their formula heavily weighs the money to NC State and UNC. Under their formula and their proposal, those schools would get $24 million in this fiscal year, up to $31 million in the next fiscal year, and then continue to grow as sports gambling grows. The other G5 schools that play football would get $5.3 million. The other schools that are Division I and don't play in the FBS would get about $4.8 million. So it's a dramatically weighed towards NC State and UNC. Obviously, you've got $20 million in revenue sharing right now. Under the Senate proposal, that would be all taken care of with gambling money. It would be a huge down payment on athletics competition for both NC State and UNC. Now, the House and the Senate both passed those bills. They have not agreed on a compromise budget. There is no budget for the state of North Carolina. So right now, for this month and next month, and until they pass a budget, UNC and NC State are getting 0% of the revenue from sports gambling. But
at some point, it's going to be there.
Yeah,
and you and I have been in some of those conversations. I think the clear mission, and you don't hire Steve Newmark without being part of your mission. They want to be the financially preeminent school in this league. And if they move to the SEC or Big Ten, they want to be at the top tier there immediately as well. I think that's what's being positioned. And I think that's part of why this is happening. I mean, even NC State, if they get left out, they'll still be a big money player wherever they settle, whether it's the Big 12 or whatever the ACC still is, if, of course, Carolina leaves, or State's going to be dramatically more competitive from a financial level moving forward as well. So it helps both. And I actually think, I'm a believer, sidebar here for a moment, that NC State being competitive is good for North Carolina. I really believe that, and I believe Carolina being competitive is good for State. Just like in basketball, Duke and Carolina help each other. I think the more important football is in this state, the better those two programs benefit from attention and everything else across the board in the state.
Yeah, I mean, I talked to Bubba Cunningham and said, it looks like your budget is going to be $200 million here either next year or the year after. And he said, well, there are ACC schools where that number starts with a 3. So, like, as much as UNC is investing in these programs, Clemson and Florida State aren't stopping their investment. They're going up as well. I think I'm very interested to see what happens at a school like Virginia Tech, where their AD laid it out to their boards and said, look, we don't have enough money to compete in the ACC, and we're going to get further and further left behind. It's up to you guys. Invest in us, and we'll see what happens at Virginia Tech. So this conversation is happening all across the ACC and all across the country.
Well, and I know this is football, but the basketball decision with the arena is going to affect football. So, and you know what they want to do, and you know what some of the numbers look like if it works out if it works out the way that they would like for it to. That would be another boon. I think if that happens, everything works out, the financing works out the way that they would like for it to work out, they might be one of those programs in the 3s.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't think we're talking out of school. I've reported on this, and they'd like to put that the building at Carolina North, in part because you can get private investment to help you build that. I mean, I've reported a lot on what's happening around the Lenovo Center here in Raleigh, where the Hurricanes play. We're talking about $1 billion investment and building that out. I mean, I often say sports is not sports. Sports is real estate. That's what it's turned into. And if you can put an arena at Carolina North with all the trappings around it and generate revenue off those other things, off entertainment options, food, bar and restaurant, all that stuff, housing even, then you're ahead of the game. And that's what all sports are turning into. Look at all the professional sports. They were all developing areas around their arena because you want to bring in more money when you're not playing sports.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Brian, how can people find all your work?
Yeah, WRAL.com, and then I'm on Twitter or X at Murph's Turf. Post way too much over there, but that's MURPHSTURPH.
I think I retweet you more than anybody outside of our network.
Yeah,
because you do fantastic work. I've been looking for. I told Jacob a long time ago we need to have you on. We start doing this stuff because it's really top notch. Nobody else is reporting on this the way you have, and keep it up because you're doing everybody a benefit, including fellow journos who don't have the time to spin some of those numbers.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate it. I rely on you guys. I'll let you guys handle most of the football coverage and what's happening with the depth chart and stuff, and I'll try to focus on somewhere else because I think the news ecosystem needs reporting on all these different things.
Absolutely.
100%. Real quickly, AJ, before he goes, I'm going to put a link to his Twitter in our description, but I got to ask you, because we're going to do it later on in this show. prediction for Saturday, Brian. What do you think's going to happen down in Orlando?
Yeah, not really my business, but I actually think UCF might win. I mean, I
that's
think
my prediction. I
think I'm sure that's not what your listeners want to hear, but I could see Carolina losing by 7 or 10 on the road at the bounce house. I mean, it's a tough environment, a lot of speed on the UCF team, and not sure Carolina's like totally there yet, where they may end up this season.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I agree with you.
Yeah, I think you got 3 picks.
Brian, thank you, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Anytime.
I appreciate you coming on, and I'll see you down the road shortly.
All right, thank you.
Really good stuff there from Brian Murphy. Appreciating him coming on as well. AJ, I'm glad he can break it down pretty simple, because like you start reading, hearing about some of this stuff. I don't know about you, AJ. My wife does the financials in our house. It is just right over my head sometimes when people are talking about all this stuff. So it's great to have someone like him who can kind of break it down, kind of simplify it for everybody into something that's kind of easily digestible. So yeah,
and he's on top of it. That. I don't have time to be on top of it as much as he is. And like I said, I've been in some of the same conversations. I have a fair understanding, but it's the numbers and the understanding the whole House situation in the state legislature. He understands that very, very well. I strongly encourage all Carolina and state fans in particular to follow him and follow his work, because he's totally on top of this stuff.
100%.
And he's really the only one who's on top of it, who's also intertwining covering the teams, which is very important. So he sees the beans, but he understands what the beans mean as well, and how the beans relate to the programs. And that's what makes his work so incredibly valuable.
Yeah, links, like I mentioned earlier, his Twitter will be in our description below, so go over there and give him a follow. He's a fantastic follow on Twitter/X or whatever the heck we're supposed to call it nowadays. All right, AJ, let's dive into the UCF preview portion of this one. There's some interesting similarities between this team, and like we've talked about, I'm very intrigued about this matchup, because I think it's two teams that have a lot of newness to them, which we're going to talk about here. But first ever meeting between Carolina and UCF. Previous matchups in 2018 and 2020 were canceled because of Hurricane Florence and COVID. And interestingly enough, UNC has never beaten a Big 12 member since the league formed in 1996. So hoping that can change on Saturday afternoon down in Orlando.
They haven't played a whole lot, have they?
No, there's a few. I know
they had a home with Texas in there. They played at Oklahoma. They played West Virginia in a bowl game twice.
Yep.
Beat Cincinnati before they were in the Big 12. They beat them in a bowl game. They beat TCU in 97. Was the Big 12 formed yet? Or TCU wasn't in the Big 12 yet. Mm-mm. They were in the Mountain West at that time when they beat them. So, yeah. They haven't played a whole lot of Mountain West, or excuse me, a whole lot of Big 12.
No, they haven't. They absolutely haven't. They haven't played a ton, but haven't beaten anybody yet either. Yeah. So, like I said,
there's some programs in that conference they haven't played yet. They haven't played Iowa State, Kansas State. I don't think they played Colorado in football. BYU they haven't played in football.
Mm-mm. There's a lot of teams that they haven't matched up with in terms of that one. So, yeah, you're absolutely right. I was trying to pull up the teams in the Big 12 because I had it written down.
Well, they played a lot of them. Like they played the teams Utah, that they played Utah when they were not in the Big 12.
Yeah.
So they played Arizona State when they were in the Pac-12, the Pac-10 at the time, I think maybe. They played Arizona in a bowl game a long time ago. They were Pac-10 at the time. So teams that are currently in that league, they played most of them at some point. You know, Baylor, they played Texas Tech, they played Houston.
Yeah, a few of the notable ones. The loss to Baylor in 2015, West Virginia 2023 Duke's Mayo Bowl, just a bad performance, and then TCU earlier this season. Yeah. That's just a few of the more notable teams that Carolina has played in the Big 12 and lost to. And I know there's more, but I wanted to I had that written down somewhere and I couldn't find it. I should have put it in my show notes right here. But yeah, hoping to reverse that this Saturday afternoon for sure. And I want to talk about a few of the similarities between these two teams, AJ, because I think there's three in particular that stand out to me the most. First and foremost, both teams, new head coaches. I know Scott Frost was there before. So the 2.0 era reminds me of the Mac Brown 2.0 era guy coming back, trying to kind of turn the fortunes around on the program that has struggled since he left after lifting the national championship a few years ago under him. this is an interesting note that I didn't realize until I kind of dove into it a little bit, because why would I know anything about UCF football without, Googling some of it? Carolina, 70 new players. This is something Scott Frost talked about in his press conference this week. UCF has 69, man. So this is very similarities in between of the sheer amount of roster turnover in year one under both of these coaches. And I think the last biggest thing in terms of similarities between this team, that we've spent a lot of time talking about this week and in this show already, is QB uncertainties. The Knights have QB question marks of their own. Taven Jackson started in the win over NCA&T. They are coming off a bye week, so this was 2 weeks ago. And then after Cam Fancher, who was the starter to open the season, got injured in their opening win over Jacksonville State at home. So as of right now, no starter name for this week. Fancher is back practicing, but going into this one, it is a little bit of a coin toss in terms of who is going to be their starting quarterback on Saturday. And it makes it a little bit trickier to prepare, I think, as well. So there are some similarities between these two programs for sure. I've got some breakdowns on the offense, some breakdowns on the defense, but I want to kick it to you real quickly so I don't talk for the next 20 minutes on this. But what's your take on just the similarities there? Because I think that's what makes this matchup more intriguing. And one of the other intriguing things that I think is these are two teams. UCF is coming off a bye week, only played 2 games. They are 2-0, but they barely beat Jacksonville State and then blew out NCA&T at home. And then Carolina, on the same perspective, is they have that opening game against TCU, get embarrassed. And then they've had a similar kind of schedule the last 2 weeks as well, where they've played, I don't want to say gimme teams, but teams they should be beating. So there are a lot of similarities in a lot of ways between both of these programs and where they are currently at right now.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think Carolina be prepared to face both quarterbacks. Taven Jackson, his brother, if you're Carolina fans love college basketball, Trace Jackson Davis from Indiana basketball, it's his brother.
I think he's in the league now too, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, he should be. I mean, rebounding like he can. He's a damn good player. Jackson was an Elite 11 quarterback. He started out Tennessee, Indiana. You noted earlier, he started last year.
Yeah, his only start for Indiana was against Washington, funny enough.
So he's seen Steve Belichick's defense. He's seen Thad Dixon at corner. He's seen a little bit of Kamari House already. So he's seen some of that. There's some familiarity. He can move. There's a lot of explosiveness with what they did. I know they played A&T, but they did. A&T is probably not all that different from Richmond in the sense that what they are, and they were able to do an awful lot more against them than what Carolina was able to do against Richmond. So, but I don't want to fixate on that because I don't think that really matters moving forward. It's just, I'm saying it to illustrate how explosive this club was. And they've had 3 plays of 60 or more yards already.
Yeah.
They've run 126 plays on the season, and I think they have 18 that have gone for 20 or more yards. Mm-hmm. So there's chunks and there's big gashes. And that's what this defense is going to be tested with. If they can prevent that and then make this more a line of scrimmage, if you win 70% of the snaps, you win the game. Because you can win 70% of the snaps and lose a game if you give up chunk plays, which offset winning a lot of those battles. If you have a 3rd and 8, which means you win the first 2 snaps of that possession, and they convert on a 3rd and 8, that's 66% success rate per snap, but you're losing the game because they're moving the chain. So that's going to be, I think, where I gauge this team defensively. If they can prevent those chunk plays from offsetting, maybe winning some battles at the line of scrimmage, just if they win those battles. Offensively, man, we don't really wouldn't you be pleasantly surprised if you're a Carolina fan to see 400 yards of offense or even 350 in a game like this?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
They have 837 yards of offense through the first 3 games. Carolina has 41 first downs. Yeah. Carolina has run 31. They've had 31 possessions. 7 have gone for more than 40 yards.
Struggled on 3rd down, and that's been a topic of conversation.
You could be refining and learning and all the stuff we talked about earlier, but you should be able to pop a little bit more than they have. Damon June twice. 51-yarder to Culliver against Charlotte, a 39-yarder to Jordan Shipp. You got to be able to pop more than that. They haven't shown pop ability. If they can pop some of those Saturday, they have a chance. If they don't pop any of those, and they are who we've seen at the line of scrimmage offensively, it's going to be a long day. I don't see them winning this game, Jacob, because there's not enough that we've seen through 3 weeks that should really give anybody any thoughtful reason to think that they'll win the game. It would just be an emotional reason, as far as I'm concerned. However, I'm not going to say that they can't, because I think Central Florida kind of feels about itself a lot like Carolina feels about itself right now. Don't really know what you got. Mm-hmm. And this is sort of a mini litmus test for both teams right now.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I want to dive into some specifics on them offensively and defensively to kind of illustrate my belief as well, which is like yours. I mean, I said before the season started, I didn't think Carolina was winning this game. That's still how I feel about it. Here's some reasons why, and here's some things I think Carolina may struggle with. And again, on the other side, because this is some things, albeit against lesser competition so far through for UCF, that they've excelled in so far. But the rushing game, we haven't even talked about that. I mean, averaging 232 rushing yards a game, but they've only played 2 games. So I'm putting an asterisk by a couple of these stats that I'm going to read out right now. That ranks number 20 nationally right now, and put up 356 rushing yards on 32 carries versus NCA&T. That's 11.1 yards per carry. Jaden Nixon has been the guy, but they have currently right now 3 rushers, including another quarterback who's played in Ja'Curry Brown with over 100 yards. But Jaden Nixon has been absolutely explosive. 6 carries, 150 yards, 25 yards a carry, and 2 touchdowns. So he has been getting off some very explosive plays so far this year.
I have to jump in for a second. Let's just be fair too. If we're going, I like to pull off some of the big plays to find out who you really are, because they can skew numbers, right? So you pull off DeMond Jones 45 and 50 the other day. Well, what was he for the rest? Because that's what happens most of the time. That's really more reflective on who you are. Having the ability to get that big play complements who you are and adds to who you are. The kid from UCF you just mentioned, he had touchdown runs of 86 and 67 yards the other day.
Yeah, Jaden Nixon, yeah.
Jaden Nixon. That skews a lot of stuff. So, and let's remember, in their first game, they were trailing Jacksonville State, and they beat them by a touchdown. Now, Jacksonville State's an FBS program. That's where Will Osteen played last year. They're not completely awful. They beat Florida State a couple of years ago, but it's still Jacksonville State. They're still a Big 12 team playing Jacksonville State at home. So they maybe should have been a little bit better, but there was a long weather delay. They've had weather delays in both games, by the way.
I know there's a chance of rain again on Saturday down there. So sorry to hear it. Sorry to burst your bubble.
Go away. Please come back another day when I'm not there. So
yeah, I think you're going to see some more rain down there.
Yeah, that's why I'm saying that there's some stuff for them to pick at if you want to pick at it, and there's some stuff not to pick at. I think there's something similar with Carolina. That's what makes this so interesting, because for all the information that both staffs think that they have on their team, they're going to get more of it on Saturday. And I think we're going to get more for Carolina simply because the speed element. We talked to a couple of NFL scouts and some coaches on other major college football programs that we have connections to that watched the TCU game. And the first thing that jumped out to them was how slow Carolina looked.
Yes.
Now, I think a lot of that slow was pre-snap. If you're bad in pre-snap and you break late, you're breaking wrong, you're slow. I don't care who you are. If Usain Bolt breaks the wrong way, he ain't that fast, because the guy who breaks the right way has got a head start, and it's bang, bang, bang. Yeah. So does Carolina still look slow defensively? Do they look slow offensively? They were slow with stuff to develop. If Carolina still looks slow against Central Florida, Carolina's a slow team.
Yeah,
I think that's something definitive we can say. If Carolina doesn't look slow against Central Florida, there's an earmark to point to and say, okay, they're so much better in that aspect of the game because of what they've learned.
Yeah.
Because individually, none of the players are any faster or quicker now than they were 3 weeks ago. But they could be a lot smarter, better prepared, and more self-assured in how they view things and how they read things and the decisions they make before the ball is snapped. So because of that, that's one thing I think we're going to learn 100%. And I have no idea what the answer is. I suspect that they won't be as slow, and they may not be as fast as you would want, maybe somewhere in between, and that would reflect progress. I know people don't want to hear about progress, and sure as hell don't want to hear about the process. But the coaching staff sees it that way. They want progress, and they know they're in a process. And if there's enough progress to satisfy the process on Saturday, they have a chance to win. But they're going to need to get some stuff on defense. The defense gave them some great field position against Richmond, and the offense scored points off it. The defense gave them points against Richmond, with Bears touchdown or fumble return for the touchdown. I think they're going to need some of that to win games like this, certainly right now and maybe all year long. It might have to be one of those deals where special teams gets you a touchdown here or there, gets you some good field position, you block a punt every once in a while, and defense is able to get you the ball at the other team's 40, their team's 30, and you're able to get some points out of it. I have a feeling that might be the kind of team that this has to be in order to have some success this season. We're going to find out a lot at 3:30 on Saturday.
We will. Yeah, the defense has done a good job forcing turnovers, and we've seen Carolina teams in the past, particularly under Mac Brown, that would go out there and, you'd have these 40 to 38 type games where the offense would just score enough points for you to win, and the defense just wouldn't get those stops that they needed to, didn't force turnovers. I mean, how many times do we talk about that? I look at this team on the small sample size that we have, and I think personally this team is going to have a successful season. And this is a statement that every football team wants, but I illustrated the point of saying we didn't see this a lot under Mac Brown. We saw an offense that just kind of had to outscore everybody. If they didn't, they didn't win. I think this is a team that is going to rely very, very heavily on complementary football. I think this is a team that needs and has to play complementary football to win, because we've seen that in the first few games. We've seen a defense that has forced turnovers. We even saw them force turnover against TCU. So they have shown the ability to do that. But when you look at the offensive struggles that we've seen, the inability to kind of move the ball, the inability to establish a consistent passing game, the defense, I think, especially going into this game, is going to have to force some of those turnovers or at least stop some UCF drives early to give Carolina's offense some good field position in order to kind of put some more points up. I don't think this is a team like we've seen in the past. They can just go out there. Well, I know for a fact it isn't so far. Can go out there and just score you 30 or 40 points on any given night. Maybe that changes based on the sample size I've seen. I don't think it will. So I think this is a team that more so than any other team I've seen at Carolina in a long time needs and is going to rely on that complementary football side of things to put good games together and be able to kind of grind some of these out. So
let me add to that. The other thing that really struck me in the TCU game, the players recognize this. A couple of negative things happened, and like the bottom caved in.
Yeah, it caved in quick. That Marcus Allen horrible PI kind of changed.
And Kamari House admitted that affected the group, affected them across the board.
You could tell.
I think what you saw there was a perfect example of 70 new players, and you really don't know who your leader's going to be until you get tested.
Yeah.
Anybody could be a rah-rah fanny smacking leader on August 15th. Who's going to be that guy on September 1st when the floodgates open? They didn't have that guy. I thought there was a lot of looking around. There was a lot of, oh my gosh, it was almost a deer in the headlights kind of thing with that team. If there's a stretch Saturday where the floodgates are kind of kicked open a little bit and it looks like UCF's explosiveness is going to amplify, are the Tar Heels able to stop it? And that's complementary football. You get off the field, and then the offense can't give the ball right back 3 plays later.
Yeah, you can't go through it.
Remember, Richmond had a stretch where it had the ball for 15 minutes and 20 seconds out of 16 and a half minutes of the game last weekend. Defense couldn't get off. I put some real positive stats up there about the defense, but they couldn't get off the field. And then when the offense got the ball, they gave it back right away. So those are the things that you can measure progress. If those gates open a little bit, are the Tar Heels there to shut them? Or do they get overwhelmed with the rush of water? Yeah. Well, they got overwhelmed by TCU. If they don't against UCF, that's another positive. So look for that. If that happens, you start to sense, oh my gosh, this thing could get out of control here fast. That's the fork in the road. 70 new players. They've had 3 weeks since then. What did they learn? Who stepped up? Who are the fanny smackers? Who are the leaders? Who are the guys that say, oh, this ain't happening? We'll see.
We'll find out. We'll find out on Saturday, man. Prediction real quickly before we head out. I'm 24-17. You'll see it in my staff picks. I think UCF wins this one. My 99% of my reason for doing that is, well, there's two reasons. A, I got to stick from my guns because I thought Carolina would lose this game before the preseason. I still feel that way. Before the season started, excuse me. But I just don't, more than anything, I don't know if Carolina, based on what I've seen so far, can go down and score enough points to beat UCF. And again, it's a solid UCF defense too, only giving up 17 points in 2 games. And right now, again, big asterisks beside it because they played only 2 games and they were against lesser opposition. The rank's number 26 in total defense right now. So that doesn't fill me with any more confidence right now that this Carolina team is just going to go down there and put up 30, 35. But again, maybe the defense does enough where it is a low scoring game, and maybe the defense is more of the real deal, kind of like we're seeing over these last couple games, and it stays a low scoring game and Carolina can kind of squeak one out. I think if they win, that's what's going to have to happen, but I'm going to just stick with 24-17 UCF. I'm sorry, Carolina fans. I don't see it right now.
I remember a long time ago, they won at UConn during that period around Dan Orlovsky when UConn was pretty good. They played a Fiesta Bowl, and Carolina went up there and beat them 12-10 because UConn got called for a holding in the end zone. So it was a safety. People are like, what a cheap win. 12-10 Saturday in Orlando with a holding in the end zone as the deciding points is a great win for this team.
Yeah. Because
if they win the game, even if there's a crap load of ugly stuff, that means that they've done enough good stuff, wherever it comes from, to win the game. That's why I'm saying any kind of win is a great win for this team. Mm-hmm. Because this coaching staff will then be able to sit down and parse the film and say, okay, here's a bunch of garbage over here. You guys got to stop. But you know what? Here's some winning football over here. I think this club needs to know it can play some winning football against a reputable opponent. So for fans, they're going to overreact about bad stuff. A win is a win. I think learning how to win is huge, especially the way this club got run over in the first game. And there's sort of a Belichick way of finding ways to win. Winning is winning. You don't have to throw for 350. Brady didn't have to throw for 350 every week to win. Just get the win. And I think that is part of the test this weekend. If they can find a way to win, even if it's an ugly game, that's a massive step forward. And I think the staff would treat it that way. And it'll be very interesting to see what fan reaction is. Now, if they lose a very close game, I still think there might be some positives to take from it because this is a bigger picture situation. But winning is winning. Mm-hmm. Any kind of win, no matter how it comes by, just if you're going to be critical, pump the brakes a little bit and let it absorb, because North Carolina doesn't win road non-conference games very often. He got one at Minnesota last year. Minnesota was probably comparable to what UCF is right now, but the Tar Heels didn't back that up. If you go back, and I'm veering off very quickly here, but if you go back and look at the season openers defensively under Mac Brown, part 2, very good performances across the board, but they were never backed up. They got progressively worse. The penalties, last year they had 3 in the opener at Minnesota. By the 3rd week against A&T, they had 16. So it went the wrong way. Now that might reflect things actually going the right way. Maybe not at the pace and the rate people want, but who cares? If you're headed the right way, and by the way, they have half the number, not even half the number of penalties. They have they're averaging 4. They have 12 penalties through 3 games now. They had 27 last year through 3 games. Mm-hmm. So I think allow things to progress. That to me is the measuring stick, or the yardstick, if you will, that Brian mentioned for this game. And that's what I'm looking forward to.
Absolutely.
And I have to go to.
I was going to say, I was going to outro this because I know you got to go. This is a team.
My elbow is out because my arm's all messed up.
This is a team. I do agree with. This is a team that's still very early in that process. That P word we like to use. So yeah, I think just get a win down there is the only thing that matters right now. We'll see if they can fix some things up as they go into the bye week, and then Clemson after that. But I've been Jacob Turner. He's been Andrew Jones. Another big thank you to Brian Murphy from WRAL for hopping on this show with us. We appreciate him joining us. Make sure you go below to follow him on Twitter and check us out on all our social channels as well. Links are all in the description below. Get your predictions in. Let us know what you think is going to happen in the comments below. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, hit that notification bell too so you know every single time we upload, and we will see y'all next time. Thanks.